wonderful story of love. Tell it to me again, wonderful story of love. With the immortal strain, angels with rapture announce it, shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love. 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 Though you are far away, wonderful story of love. Still he doth call today, calling from Calvary's mountain, down from the crystal bright fountain, e'en from the dawn of creation. Wonderful story of love. 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 Jesus provides a rest. Wonderful story of love. For all the pure and...
All right, so Daniel's seen these four beasts, and then it says, as I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000 thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking, and as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Okay, I'm going to ask the easy question. The Ancient of Days. Okay, we've got a God. Actually, we've got two gods. Anybody else? I'm concurrent with that, by the way. So I agree completely that that is who that is describing and talking about. White clothing, purity, hair like wool, purity. Throne of fiery flames. We're told in other places our God is a consuming fire. His authority is great. Represents God's wisdom, his purity, and his authority. The judgment of the four beasts. The beast is slain, the body is destroyed, dominion is taken away. That's pretty clear. The fourth beast, representing some human kingdom, I believe likely Rome. But I think that the principle of talking about Rome in those terms, it could apply to subsequent nations as well. The description, the picture that God might give would be different, showing the various characteristics, just like these are four separate beasts. But the idea of this great human authority, and despite its greatness, what happens to it? It's cut down. That's the nature of these human governments. There is no human government that is permanent. Now, you'll recall when we studied back in the first part of this book and we were getting our narrative about Nebuchadnezzar particularly, When Nebuchadnezzar had his vision and the explanation of the vision was given to him, and he realized that the explanation of the vision was his kingdom is going to come to an end and be replaced, what was Nebuchadnezzar's response to learning that? Okay, he basically started maneuvering to prevent the end from happening. He called in all of his rulers and secured his relationship and authority with them. He issued an edict that demanded that people show their obeisance to him. He started maneuvering to shore up and secure his power, the same way that every nation in history has acted when they have become afraid that they are losing control. They take motions to secure their control and then even ultimately try to make that permanent. And if we look at Rome, Rome went from being a republic to being a what? An empire. What's the difference between a republic and an empire? Where the control is centered. The republic, where was the control centered? In a senate of people chosen from among the people. In order to shore up control, it got vested in one individual. And then what did that one individual eventually begin to do? Dictate and then presume himself to be a god. See, when your dictatorial control is questioned, well, then you have to elevate yourself even more. And that's essentially what Nebuchadnezzar did. And it is what governments do throughout history, is they continue to act and to move and to maneuver and to behave in ways to get the control concentrated in self and to make whatever claims are necessary to stave off any potential challengers. If the emperor is God, what mortal man can question his authority? And so that's ultimately what they're doing. That is what happens across the board. Happened to the great democracy of Greece as well. Eventually run by an emperor, a single individual that controlled all things. It's just what happens. What we're being told here is it doesn't matter what movements we make, it doesn't matter how we respond, it doesn't matter how quickly we act, it doesn't matter how great our army is, it doesn't matter how strong we are. All of them are temporary. They will die. Historical empires will be judged. And in the end, who is going to be vindicated? By the way, very often, historically, in the last 2,000 years at least, and really going back even further than that, who has been persecuted the most in trying to shore up that kind of human control? God's people. Going all the way back to Egypt. Why did Egypt subject Israel to slavery? Because they were afraid of them. They were prospering too much. They were getting too many in number. They were afraid of their challenge to their control. So we're going to assert more control over them. Also, what did they do during that time as the nation continued to flourish even under slavery? There's an edict that said what? Kill all the baby boys. That happens again when? With Rome and Israel. trying to assert dominance and control the people of God. What this is saying is that ultimately these people will be judged and destroyed, which means that God's people will be vindicated and liberated. So no matter how bad it gets, we can rest assured what? That God is still with us. And that in the end, we will be delivered. Don't confuse God's judgment of nations with God's final judgment. People do that in their interpretation of this book and their interpretation of the book of Revelation. In a lot of places, that is, they're not the same thing. The final judgment is going to be an individual judgment, where each one of us will stand and give an account of ourselves to God. The judgment of nations is a collective judgment against groups of people. Very different thing. Same God, same authority to judge, same power to judge, but the judgment of nations is an ongoing thing that has always been the case, and the final judgment is something that will take place at the end of all things. And when I say of all things, I mean all material things, all things as we know and relate to them. The book of 1 Thessalonians talks about it in terms of the earth and its works being burned up. The material world, the material universe ceasing to exist. That is the moment in which we will all individually give an account of our lives to God. But these judgments against the nations is a perpetual ongoing thing. There is some assurance in this that God's justice will prevail. The psalmist at one point, if the foundations are destroyed, what shall the righteous do? He asks the question. In the midst of turmoil, it does appear from time to time that the just are being killed and are suffering, while the unjust are being rewarded. God's justice will prevail. Justice will roll forth. We can rest assured that that is true, even if our life is taken from us, our justice is not. Do we understand and see that in what we've seen so far here in Daniel? And again, I'll draw your attention to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Was being cast into the furnace of fire, being bound and cast into the furnace of fire, a just thing that they deserved? No. But what they said was, even if we die from this, doesn't matter. They understood that even if justice was taken from them, it would still not be ultimately taken from them. Same thing in the image of Christ on the cross. Does it appear that his justice was taken? It has that appearance until when? Until the third day when he arose. And then a number of weeks later after that when he ascended into heaven. Was justice taken from him? No, it had that appearance for a while. The same teaching in Revelation. And it's the same for us. We can rest assured that no matter what you do, and by the way, Paul's life is an example of that. How did Paul spend the last years of his life. He was in house arrest, and then he was executed. And yet, as he approached those things, what did he say? In the future, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the righteous judge will award to me on that day. So even though Rome was unjustifiably taking his life, he understood that his justice was not ultimately removed, that the justice would be awarded by God on that day. So we can rest assured that God's judgment will ensure ultimate vindication, no matter what happens in time, no matter what people say about us, no matter what our end is. What did they say about Jesus? Depends on who you look at, but some viewed him as a liar, some viewed him as a deceiver, some viewed him as a nutcase. They all viewed him as a criminal, wagging their heads and talking about him as they walked by, looking at him on the cross. Who was doing that wagging their head and talking about him, by the way? That was his fellow Jews. He was in Jerusalem, or just outside of Jerusalem. That is what they thought about him. That's what they said about him. He died a very inglorious death. In fact, a very cursed death, according to the scriptures. Well, I think maybe the only person that could come even remotely close to having the same kind of inglorious ending as it's presented in the Bible is probably Ahab's wife, Jezebel. Thank you. Because after she died, what happened to her? She wasn't even buried. She was trampled by horses, and then the dogs ate her remains. There's a couple other people that are left without being buried. Specifically, the text will say because they wanted to make a point about their state. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what people say. Doesn't matter how you're treated. Doesn't matter what they think about you. Doesn't matter that you're being killed like a common criminal and a slave at that. But you'll recall at one point, Paul is struck, and he's struck by a Roman, and his response is what? He's like, well, you're going to strike a Roman citizen? See, if it was a Roman citizen, they wouldn't have been beaten, they wouldn't have been put on a cross. But Jesus was beaten and put on a cross. And that was saying something about how they valued him as a person. And the Jews didn't value him anymore. And a good portion of them knew he was innocent, but insisted for him to be put to death anyway. And so you get that whole picture, but ultimately he was vindicated. And we're supposed to learn from these things. That's how we live our life. We don't worry about what's being said about us. We just do what is right, and we trust that God will vindicate us. That's a hard thing to do, though. What do we want to do? We want to vindicate ourselves. But God has said, vengeance belongs to whom? Him. Vengeance is mine. It's not your job. It's not your job to set the record straight. I'll do that. It will become evident one day who was right and who was wrong. He did that on purpose. He said before services that was going to happen. I say he did it on purpose. Sorry about that for the guys watching online. You got it too, I'm sure. So, we go on here. Verse 13. I saw the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. Anybody want to hazard a guess who that might be talking about? Jesus. By the way, that's not the first time that language has appeared in this book. Y'all remember that, right? Chapter 3, chapter 4. Which chapter is it? The fiery furnace. There appeared one like the Son of Man. Well, who is that? Well, I'm going to tell you that the same individual that's being described here is who was being called the Son of Man there. Behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like the Son of Man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom. All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Who said that? Jesus. That all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. What is this about? Well, it's about the contrast. The contrast to these kingdoms which are certain to be destroyed and die, and this everlasting dominion that is given by God. Where, at least, do we claim the authority and power for our own nation comes from? Well, that's where the nation comes from, yes. But where do we claim when we talk about it? Power comes from the people. It's the consent of the governed. Anytime you're talking about human endeavors, they arise from ourselves. Now, some governments arise by force of an individual who claims some kind of divine authority or some other basis for his authority. Maybe he's just bigger and stronger. The way I was taught it when I studied political science was clubs is Trump. Not the person, but like the suit in a card game, that regardless of what value is there, it wins. Clubs, power, force. If you have the ability to exercise force over other people, you can control. Sometimes it comes down to that. In our nation, we say, look, the power arises from the consent of the governed. The people must approve. And that's not what's being described here about this dominion. This dominion's coming before the Ancient of Days and is given his power and authority from the Ancient of Days. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. This language, I believe, verses 13 and 14, very much messianic. I use that term very intentionally as well. The person of the Godhead who was incarnated as Jesus pre-existed his incarnation. It is in the person of Jesus, in the Messiah, that he is given dominion. In his nature, his eternal nature as God, the dominion was already his. It is in his role as the Son of Man that he is given authority to rule. And that authority is everlasting. It shall not pass away. I think it's interesting that we have those parallel statements there in verse 14. As if we don't know what everlasting dominion means, we get this definition, which shall not pass away. But that is a direct contrast to the beast that we're told has died. This dominion will not pass away, and his kingdom, one that shall not be destroyed. Which means there's no other kingdom that's going to come upset the balance as well. Once this kingdom is established, this kingdom will continue, and no one's going to take it out. And that's kind of where I ended the discussion last time and leading up to this, talking about we can pretty much just dismiss this unwarranted fear that many Christians have that the church is dying. The church cannot die. It's the kingdom of God. And it shall not pass away and shall not be destroyed. And that's very strong language, shall language. From a legal standpoint, this is not may language. This is not it is possible for it not to pass away. It is possible for it. It will not pass away. It will not be destroyed. Or to put it in the negative, it is impossible that it passes away. Impossible that it be destroyed. We have no fear in that. So we also need not worry about defecting to the other side as subjects of that kingdom. That happens a lot. What happened after the Allied forces in World War II defeated Germany? What happened? We know that history. It wasn't that long ago, was it? Some of the people in this room lived through it. So, but what happened? I'm going to tell you what happened. A lot of those people very, very quickly gave up and switched sides. And a lot of them came to the United States. Became citizens of the United States. We put a man on the moon in the 1960s because of one of them. The guy who had designed the missiles for Germany's war machine in World War II is also the guy that designed the rockets that put man on the moon. Who else did we pick up? Guys like Einstein, who, when it became very, very clear that that was the losing side, I'd rather be here on the side of the winners. It's always better to be on the victory side. That is what happens. We don't need to even for a moment think about needing to change sides, because no matter how bleak it looks, what do we know? This kingdom shall not be destroyed. It is everlasting. It will not pass away. We have nothing to fear. As for me, Daniel, verse 15, he says, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. He was very troubled by these things. I can imagine. You know who else was troubled by their visions? Nebuchadnezzar. I can't imagine what it would be like to actually receive this kind of a, for lack of, I'm going to use this term in a very, well, it's actually, I'm going to use it in an accurate way, but it's going to be misunderstood because of the way the term is generally used. This kind of an apocalyptic vision. can be terrifying. The truth can be terrifying. Realizing that things that you've believed your whole life or been conditioned to accept are false, and that things function outside of the realm of what you have control over, and that judgment is there, and to be faith, these kinds of things are alarming. And he's confronted with these visions. I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Then I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its 10th horn of iron and the claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet, and about the 10 horns that was on his head, and the other horn that came up, and before which 3 of them fell, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke against great things that seemed greater than its companions. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said of the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth, and trample it down, and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise. And by the way, I don't know if it's to be taken as literal 10 kings. This is very symbolic language, clearly. I'm going to go with symbolic use of numbers here. So there's not necessarily a list of 10 you would have to come up with, but the idea being that you got the complete set. He shall be different from another one shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones. That's why he's set off as a separate, not part of the group. He shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High. He shall wear out the saints of the Most High. He shall think to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. That's one of the controversial phrases in this book. I don't think that there is any formula with which we can come up with any set amount of time that's under consideration. It simply means what? The fullness of time. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away to be consumed and destroyed to the end. I'm going to stop there and just make this observation. So we've got this other ruler who's different than the rulers before him, who has the kind of power that he can unseat multiple kings. And he begins to change and dictate and control. And it even says here that he shall seek to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand, which means what? He succeeds for a while to change things that we think of as being unchangeable, like the times. But in the end, his dominion is going to be taken away, and he too is going to fall like all the rest. The greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. The superlative nature of the kingdom of God, the kingdom that is made without hands, eternal in the heavens. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. He just simply is saying that he remembered these things. We will, in the introduction next time, summarize and draw some conclusions from this, and then get into Daniel chapter 8 in the class period, if the Lord wills. I appreciate everybody's presence and attention. this morning, and hopefully it's been clear enough. But I will say this: if you have any questions for me, or there's any way that I can help you in better understanding these things, please feel free to ask.
Wonderful story of love, tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love, with the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it, shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love, wonderful story of love, wonderful story of love, wonderful story of love.